We're actually running ahead of schedule here. 4 minutes after 6. We're going to resume the meeting. And we have one remaining item on the agenda, which is item 5G, discussion possible action, including direction of staff regarding funded and vacant positions at the Mendocino County Sheriff's Office and sheriff presentation on specific cannabis enforcement outcomes Board of Supervisors can expect with positions filled. And the sponsors of this are Supervisors Mulhern and Williams, as well as the Sheriff Coroner. So I'd like to take it to them.
I guess I'll start. So thank you, Sheriff Kendall, for joining us. You know, one of the conversations that we have about enforcement often revolves around the amount of deputy sheriffs that we have that can cover the county. So I know that you had prepared a verbal report today to the board about some funded but vacant positions and what that could possibly look like for additional cannabis enforcement, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay, so currently the Sheriff's Office is down several positions, both in the jail and in the patrol staff. And the jail actually, it does affect the patrol staff because we have historically worked our deputies through custody and then sent them off to the police academy. And the difference for us has been a person who works custody has about an 82% chance of completing field training and patrol successfully, and then remaining with us for a longer period of time. A person who has not worked custody, a person that we just hire and send to the police academy, I believe we're running at about 38 to 42% chance of them being successful in the field training program. So with the numbers being down in the jail, COVID shutting down the police academies, things like that, we got behind the curve on a couple of different things. Number one was the retirements. We had several people retire in the last couple of years. And then on top of that, not being able to fill those slots through the police academy due to the shutdown and whatnot, we've also had people separated from us for other reasons. Some that we had asked to separate, some that went on to greener pastures because there was other things going on, and some people who just didn't like being in the area any longer. What we're doing to basically build our ranks up, we've been working with the Public Safety Committee. They're going to come up with some funding for us. We're putting together brochures and some things to entice people to come to Mendocino County. We have some very good things going on in Mendocino County. We have a livable wage in the area where you can work. People can still afford housing here much easier than what they can in the Bay Area and things like that. We've made several contacts with the police academies. We're working currently with a couple of academies down in the Central Valley area for recruitment for the jail. And then we're also reaching out to the other police academies. These are what we're running into. The issues for us are, we used to have 40 cadets in a police academy. College of the Redwoods has 10 now. And people just simply are not putting in for law enforcement jobs. Where we would like to get I'm checking my notes here. Where we would like to get is more local law enforcement education at the Mendocino College. We're working towards that. I'm working on a new incentive program for our out-of-the-way areas, including the South Coast and Covelo. It's at the meet and confer stage before I would bring it forward to the board. We would like to start, and we have been doing a lot of advertising on social media, in Police One, in Poor Act Magazine, and various places like that. We would like to get to the point where we partner up with trade magazines through, you know, some of the local tourism locations, partner with local real estate agencies so we can find some housing for these folks. That's been a big problem for us as well. And I'm not sure what else you would like me to go into.
Well, I have a question, if I may.
Yeah.
So I see we have 46, or you have 46 deputy sheriffs today, and there's 6 vacancies. Can you talk a little bit about those 6? How many of those would we have to fill to make a difference on the cannabis problem, especially in the, say, Covelo area, where we see a lot of regular violent crime? And I imagine all 5 supervisors are getting regular contact from folks in Covelo asking, why won't you fund law enforcement? We have a problem. How many of these 6 would we have to fund in order to make a dent in that problem? And do you need any additional assistance besides budget?
Well, we're going to have to go beyond the 6, because I also have, I believe, 5 or 6 that are out on long-term injury. Several of these guys, I do not expect to be back. Some of the injuries, you do not see a deputy come back to work after. And that's just, some of it is age, some of it is the type of injury. And so I think that we're actually further down than 6 at this point. I think that we were 7 and then 5 for a total of a dozen. So, you know, right now there's a dozen down, and I'm not certain what we can do to bring those numbers up to a point where we can actually make an impact. The captain and I sat down 2 weeks ago and had a conversation about what it would take to put more people into marijuana unit to be able to get a handle on this issue that we're having. But if I can show you a couple of slides about what we are facing, I will show you what we're up against in the marijuana industry. Is that okay?
Go ahead.
I don't know if you folks can see where my mouse is.
We can.
Okay, so these on the left is Covelo in 2017. That is approximately about a 5-acre field. In that field, I counted them out. There's roughly, I can't tell how many are in that little hoop house there, but probably 150 marijuana plants. 3 years later, on the right, we seized 25,000 marijuana plants. And that is very indicative of the growth in that industry right now. The next, this is what we're seeing: industrial size, completely illegal grows. And when we get there, these are the types of firearms that we're seeing. This is not a thing where we will send 1 or 2 deputy sheriffs out to handle it. This requires an absolute well-trained team to go deal with this. These are the types of things that, to be honest with you, we're facing on a daily basis right now, and it's quite concerning. Now let me stop sharing my screen. The captain has explained to me that when we get back up to an acceptable level for the patrol forces, then he's going to be comfortable putting more people into investigations. For him, that acceptable level is 10 deputies per outlying substation, and I believe it was 14 in Ukiah, in the central station, because in Ukiah we actually run 24 hours. In the outlying areas we're running 20. We went to a 24-hour schedule a while back during COVID because we had so many people out with the close contacts and things like that. The deputies actually enjoy a 24-hour coverage a lot more, and I think that we get better service out of 24-hour coverage because we handle calls faster. People aren't called out from their homes. It's just an easier life for everyone, for the folks that we're serving and the deputies that are working. Honestly, I think that if we were able to get up to that point where we got 10, and I believe that he said 14, that would be everybody that we have off the roster right now that has not been hired, and that wouldn't be touching the folks who are out on injury. At that point, we would be able to put some more personnel towards the marijuana issue. However, that would also cut into whether or not we would be able to handle some of the cold cases and whatnot that we've been working on with homicides, with missing persons, and various other things.
How much money do you need from the board to handle the marijuana problem?
That's an excellent question. I think that one of the questions that we're going to have to look into is, what is the marijuana problem going to look like this year? And I don't have a clue on that yet. I haven't had enough time in the sky. So
based on last year, and say we use code enforcement for the sites that are sort of the mom and pops that are out of scale but not violent, and we leave just the more concerning higher profile problems for your department. What do you think you would need roughly, rounded to the nearest million? Just so the board can get a ballpark of what we have to find.
Well, I'm trying to do the math in my head at this point. It would be making sure that we are fully funded, but we've got making sure that we're fully funded for that next 7. If we assign just kind of a rough number of, say, 200,000 for deputies with overtime, and that's weighted rate, of course. And then I'd have to sit down and figure out the patrol car cost, mileage, and whatnot. Then I think that we could start beginning to put some people back into the investigative units.
So I'm just trying to do the math there. So 7 deputies times $200,000 a deputy would be 1.4 million plus patrol vehicles. Patrol vehicles
plus, any training or anything like that. We had it all broken down in the previous presentation. I believe that 10 was looking at $4 million. And so full load, everything, that would put us at about 400,000 a deputy. Now, honestly, that is the gold-plated version of it, because that includes 100% of the training, including the police academy. If we pick up laterals save us roughly $40,000 between training and time that we spend with them on the field training program. The police academy is very expensive. The per diem, the mileage, the whole 9 yards. $40,000 is a savings that we would expect to see from picking up laterals. So far this year, we've picked up 3 laterals from other agencies within Mendocino County. And just doing the comparison, yes, they started at a higher weighted rate. However, we have savings built in when they walk in the door. And that savings is absolutely $40,000 in the first year.
Okay, Supervisor McGordy.
Sheriff Kendall, how much typically do we pay per year on overtime because you're short-staffed?
Oh my goodness! If we just take the what we would be short in paying for deputies, let's say that we're down 7 deputies, take almost 100% of what their cost is, and we will wind up paying that in overtime. We have typically run somewhere around $1.8–2 million in overtime per year. We've been able to offset those costs with some using less out of the 2000 series and things like that, using less out of our budget for, just the office supplies and everything else. And we've had significant savings in some vehicles and things like that. However, just during the August complex, we've put 200,000 miles on patrol cars in 40 days. And that's basically the life of 2 patrol cars in 40 days.
So when can you budget for overtime? Is it something you figure out on an annual basis, or is it sort of that's extra at the end of the year?
No, we had not been budgeting for overtime, but to be honest with you, during the budget process, we are handed a number and basically say you need to work within these parameters. And we, on the years where we don't have emergencies and we don't have things like that, we can be way closer. We can be down in that 700,000 mark with the offset from the 2000 series. But for the most of the time, we're realistically looking at anywhere between 1.4 and $2 million in overtime.
Supervisor Mulhern.
So thank you for that. And, one of the things that I've been thinking a lot is the process. So like you said, we have many open positions currently that are funded right now, but how long has the Sheriff's Department been working through the jail to become a deputy? Is that a fairly new idea or process? And what maybe guarantee would those corrections officers have? I guess there's no guarantee, but have to eventually get onto patrol. So is it like incentivized or?
Yeah, I started here in 1990, and I originally worked in the jail. The undersheriff originally worked in the jail, and To be honest with you, some of our most successful people came from working in the jail, because that's the one location where you learn how to talk things out with people, and they understand from the time that they walk in the door, we are not here for punishment. And you know, to be honest with you, it is very important to me to have as many people as I can who have worked custody in the past, because they understand what it means to be responsible for the needs of another person.
Supervisor Hashak.
Thank you. Sheriff Kendall, thank you for talking about these issues. And like that picture you showed of the mega grow in Covelo. So what can we do about that? Is it that you don't have the manpower, you're outgunned? Do we need the state involvement? You know, how do we go about, or what's your thought process on dealing with these kind of situations?
My thought process is simple: is there are no longer any teeth in the law. Most things are now a misdemeanor, which are punishable by a citation. We made 183 arrests last year for these things. We only were able to serve 49 operations last year, search warrants and outdoor just open field searches. And out of those 49, we got 225,000 plants. And we are not running into mom and pop grows because of the direction that I have told these deputies to go. We have to triage them based on my 4 enforcement objectives. And those objectives, they all carry the exact same weight. One does not take priority over the other. But my objectives are any areas that are, you know, absolutely violent. We have gunshots and things coming out of those. They will receive enforcement. Trespass grows on somebody else's property. They will receive enforcement. Any grows run by drug trafficking organizations will receive enforcement. And any violations, egregious violations against the environment in sensitive areas will receive deputies at the door, because those things, we have to realize that the environment and public safety, more so now than ever in Mendocino County, are absolutely tied together. We can't pick one over the other, because public safety will suffer if we don't take care of the environment.
How many of those, how many sites have one of those 4 that you enumerated today? Your guess is probably better than mine. How many problem sites do we have countywide?
Oh, it would be into the thousands.
Thousands. And how many do you think, I mean, we're talking about staffing up, you know, maybe 6 positions, or, you know, probably less than 10 positions. How much of a dent can we make in that? And what does the county do in this situation? Do we ask for state assistance?
I've been using state assistance. I've been using DOJ with their camp program, been using the Air National Guard and the California National Guard. They can't write cases and they can't do anything like that, but they can absolutely help us chop marijuana down. We have moved into using a small tractor to actually pull up all the marijuana and get rid of it, because it is so much faster and less labor intensive. We're looking with a DSEP grant this year to rent another small tractor or purchase one, a skid steer tractor, to be able to deal with these things, because just the labor involved in removing 25,000 plants can be 12 hours with an 8-man team. We've also worked closely with Lake County over the years, where we have assisted them where our counties touch. And currently Humboldt County is sitting just a little bit better than us. They're sitting with 4 in their marijuana enforcement team. Currently, I was able to move 1 deputy into marijuana enforcement, so I could have 2 in there, and then we have a half-time deputy sheriff who's a reserve. I would like to be able to put some support staff in there, sheriff services technician, to help with booking evidence and doing all those things, because what we don't think about is the back work that leads up to getting a search warrant for a place, and then all the work that happens on the following day with processing evidence, writing reports. It can take, just one of those sites could take 50, 60 hours to get the paperwork processed and get the evidence logged. And then last year, with losing roughly 40 days of our investigative season to the fires, I'm sorry, but we're trying to kill an elephant with a needle. And I think that if we work together in the same fashion that Humboldt County has done, we will probably see the same results. But at this point, and honestly, this is no fault of any of you folks, a lot of decisions were made before you came along. We have kind of turned a blind eye to it. When I first started in the sheriff's office, we had 5 deputy sheriffs, a sergeant, 2 reserves, and a secretary in the marijuana enforcement unit. Now I've got 1 sergeant, 1 deputy sheriff, and 1 half-time deputy. So we have basically just stepped back and not dealt with this to the point that it has grown to a monster that we're going to have to take on, and it's going to be expensive to do it.
So what do you see as next steps? We need to know how expensive, and I don't mean to put you on the spot. I know you probably have some planning to do, but you know, if we wanted to solve the problem in Covelo, what is the price tag on that? And if we can't afford it, what does half of that look like, or a quarter? What's a reasonable?
Or if we can't afford it, who do we go to get some assistance with? Because this seems like a huge public safety crisis that.
It is absolutely a public safety crisis, Supervisor McGordy. And when we spoke with Supervisor Haschak and Williams, and I spoke with CDFW, they have been very good to us to the point that they are able to. But when they have 8 people in the wet team to cover 8 counties, they're suffering the same issues that we are. And I still think that the state of California needs to step up and realize that some things aren't working, and they had better jump in with us and start making some good decisions that may not be popular, but have to be made. And, you know, a lot of the issues for us have been the fact that we have so much gray right now. There's gray everywhere. I have an embossed receipt, but I'm breaking the law. That doesn't cut it, because the black market and lawsuits thrive in the gray. When we have good decisions that are made, and whether they are popular or unpopular, everyone wants a line. Everybody wants to know, am I legal? Am I illegal? And there are a lot of people that are absolutely illegal that I will never get to, simply because the enforcement objectives cause me to have to triage everything, and I simply cannot get to them because they are not creating environmental damage. They are not working in a drug trafficking organization. They are not creating calls for service of violence. And I get calls and calls and calls regarding backyard grows that I simply cannot pull these men and women off of the jobs that they're working to be able to deal with those things. So us working in a good collaborative task force type function with code enforcement is going to give us the ability to support each other. Can't be siloed right now, because we're all facing the same problems.
Well, I think this board is very sympathetic to this plight and the people involved in it, and we want to do something. So it's going to be important to have from you a plan, kind of a proposal. We're spending over almost $2 million in overtime, which says right there you're understaffed. And if we're going to spend that anyway, we might as well have people helping, from my perspective.
Well, one of the biggest issues for me, I realize right now that all of the work that I did in Covelo, it is being replanted as we speak. I was just up there the other day with my father taking a ride. And until we get some real teeth in the fines and fees, there is no longer any teeth in the law when we simply write them a traffic citation and say, go about your way. We also have to begin removing that infrastructure. When they build something and it's being used for illegal means, I'm sorry, it's got to go away. Because when we simply leave the infrastructure in place, it's easy to just build it back up again. And the only way that we can go at it, this is driven by money. This issue is driven by money. And the only way to take the incentive out of it is to make it too expensive to continue breaking the law here.
Well, if I could, it seems like also another issue that you're raising is just the challenge of recruitment of people who will stay with, with local law enforcement, whether it's sheriff's department, police department, et cetera. And so I think if there's anything that we can do to help reach out to the local schools. I think you're right. I think people who have grown up here are more likely to stay here if they have a real job, and certainly a job in the sheriff's office, PD. Those are real jobs. They pay real wages. People can buy a home with those salaries, especially with the overtime. And so, I think we need to convince more people who grow up here that this is a real career path for them. And they may not have thought of a career in the sheriff's office or PD, but they really ought to think about it because, it's maybe one of the best jobs that they could possibly get. So anyway, so if there's anything we can do to reach out to the local school districts and get a wider cross-section of the community to consider that as a career path, I think we all would welcome the opportunity to try to do that.
One of the things that we're going to be doing as we begin this social media campaign, we are going to reach out to our supervisors, to our city councilmen. One of the most attractive things that most deputy sheriffs that I've spoken to about Mendocino County is the fact that we are supported by our board of supervisors and supported by all of our residents. I don't know what it is about Mendocino County, but people from lots of different counties that I've spoken to have brought up the fact that we are absolutely supported. And police officers are leaving various agencies in droves right now because they are not feeling the support of city councils, of board of supervisors, things like that. And that's where we are ahead of the game here. We do so many things better in Mendocino County because we don't have anyone but ourselves to rely on. And it doesn't matter what your politics are. It doesn't matter what your feelings about your neighbors are. When there is an emergency, we all roll up our sleeves and jump in together. And, that's one of the things that we will always have going for us as long as Mendocino County stays the way that it is. And so as we move forward on that, we will be speaking with supervisors and city council members and whatnot, because I don't want to just fill the ranks of the sheriff's office. We want to do this all together. If everyone leaves the Ukiah Police Department, I am responsible for dealing with that because crime and public safety does not understand where the city limit signs are. If everybody leaves Fort Bragg, we've got to all be in this together and look out for each other.
Okay. Supervisor Williams.
Yeah, so I have people call me from Covelo. Sorry to dwell on this.
Yeah.
And they start out by saying, hey, supervisor, you're not giving the sheriff any money. We have a problem over here. And I point at sheriff's office has the largest allocation. If we could scrape together every last cent we have elsewhere, close the libraries, would it be enough to address this problem? Or do we need to help get the state to recognize this is beyond our local abilities? Not that you don't need the 6 positions filled, but I'm not convinced that that'll actually address the underlying problem.
Well, with Supervisor Williams through the chair, honestly, what the underlying problem is twofold. We've had a 70% increase in population, a 0% increase in deputy sheriffs. That is the first problem. The second problem is the increase in population that is actually not on the books that we are seeing all through grow season. How do we get ahead of that? And trust me, I am a miser. My wife can attest to this. I don't want to spend a penny if I don't have to. I have been reaching out to every state and federal agency that I possibly can to make sure that I can get as much free work out of them as what I can. The satellite imagery, as we begin to move forward into that, is going to save so much money in helicopter time because we will not be out doing reconnaissance flights. We'll be out doing confirmation flights. And reconnaissance and confirmation flights are 15 minutes. Recon flights are all day at $1,000 an hour. And when we start thinking about that, it won't take very long before that imagery program pays for itself. That combined with the fact that it doesn't have to be a sheriff's office helicopter in the sky. When PG&E is working hard, my phone is blowing up constantly, wanting to know what the black helicopters are doing out there. I'm sorry, I don't run PG&E, but I still get all the complaints.
So I'm back to so that I can tell the people in Covelo that I supported addressing the problem in their backyard. How much money do we have to come up with? Or how do we get to that number?
And I can come up with a better number, but right off the top of my head, $2.4 million, but it's going to take several years for me to be able to get these hired because of the applicant pool simply isn't there. And I am absolutely not going to lower the standards. So if you don't lower the standards, we have to continue on plucking them as they come in. And when police academies only have 25% of capacity, the fight for the good people is much harder.
So 2.4 million in a few years from now, problem should be solved.
Yes. The incentive program that is with the, we'll be going to meet and confer. It should be coming before the board shortly. The incentive program for the extremely outlying areas, and I mean the South Coast and Covelo, needs to be higher to offset the cost of living for a lot of different reasons. But also we need people in there constantly. And when we can get a full 24 hours coverage, we will have resident deputies in there and we will have constant coverage.
Okay. Supervisor Mulhern.
Thank you, Sheriff. I don't know if you have given direction to your team or if the Board of Supervisors have given direction, but I know that one of the tools that works for law enforcement is essentially over hiring, knowing that you may have folks out on some type of medical disability or claim. Does the Mendocino County Sheriff's Officer have that policy?
We have never been able to overhire. We will go for a few years where we have very few injuries. However, there are just things that happen. We all get older. My knees hurt in the morning when I get up from foolish things I did in my youth. It's not the fault of the sheriff's office. And the fact of the matter is, we have some younger deputies and we have a lot of older deputies. And I mean deputies who are, stepping into their mid 40s and early 50s. And when they fall and injure a knee, they don't come back as quickly if they do come back. And so we're facing a little bit of that. It's just a sign of the times where we are having an aging patrol force.
Okay, Supervisor Hashak, and then I do want to go to public comment.
Thanks. So Sheriff Kendall, we've talked a lot about the problems in Covelo, and I'm sure that, all that we're hearing is true. But do you see this increase in violence in other places in the county? Is it happening just in Covelo, or do you see it an increase overall?
I'm seeing an increase overall. We've had some pretty serious issues in Potter Valley, Hopland, more vehicle pursuits. We just had that vehicle pursuit with a young fellow who dropped his backpack with a pistol in it. And a lot of this is because of legislation. People are being let out of prison. People are, COVID was a terrible thing for us because, let's face it, the zero bail and you are released immediately is not solving problems because there is no longer any stick to keep people in line with. The state prison making these changes, releasing hundreds, thousands of state prisoners, and then closing prisons, that type of thing is going to affect the populace. It's affecting Mendocino County in very strange ways now. And until such time that we can deal with things when they're small, then everything will get big. And let's face it, there's a lot of incentive right now not to stop for the police.
Okay,
all right, thank you.
Sheriff Kendall, if you're ready at this point, I'd like to go to public comment at this point. Okay, looking at the clerk of the board, I think I've been told we have some public comment on this item.
Yes, we do.
First on the line will be Hannah Nelson.
Yeah, this is Hannah Nelson. I'm sorry, I did not intend to speak on this issue. Thank you.
Next on the line is Monique Ramirez.
Hello, this is Monique Ramirez speaking on behalf of the Covelo Cannabis Advocacy Group. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. We really do support the Sheriff's Department in trying to find any way to get a resident deputy hired and to come and be in our community and help with all of the crime that we face, not just with cannabis, but with other reckless things as well. And it's hard when nobody wants to take the position. And it seems even if you raise the salary, it's still really hard to get people to want to come and be a part of our community, especially when you look at the community and it's riddled with just so many problems. So I'm not really sure what the answers are, but we support funding and incentives. I don't know if there could be bonuses offered or just something to be able to get somebody to come and be a part of our community and help alleviate some of the issues that we face. And I appreciate this conversation, and I know it's not easy finding the solutions, but hopefully something can happen. And it's hard because I also feel like in this discussion, talking about needing more money, but then if nobody wants to fill those positions, then what? So I wish I had more to offer for a solution. Thank you again for having the opportunity to speak.
Next on the line is Michael Katz.
Good evening, board. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. MCA supports Sheriff Kendall in his efforts to protect public safety and resources in our communities. We share the community's concern about any activities that constitute egregious environmental violations or public safety hazards, including those involving water resources. The sheriff is rightfully focused on these issues, and MCA applauds these efforts and supports them. And the sheriff has made very clear repeatedly that those who are in the program and those who want to come into the program are not perpetrating the egregious actions for which he is requesting these additional deputies. These deputies are for criminal activity. Unfortunately, it appears that licensed cultivators in the program are still being conflated with those who are responsible for this behavior. Regarding Manager Nevedal's comments on current application status, as she is new to the position, I feel I must reiterate the well-documented confusion created by the county over the last 4 years of failed cannabis program administration. Saying applicants have had 4 years to figure this out is an inaccurate representation given the constantly moving goalposts. This pervasive confusion within the program has been widely acknowledged by the board and by program applicants as likely playing a large part in the issues related to what Manager Nevedal has seen with her recent reviews of applications. All of these review numbers seem to be presented without the consideration of the realities of the past. To be clear, the program first opened using paper applications, then changed county departments, and all with incredibly high staff turnaround. It might seem like common sense to someone new to the program that if a 30-day notice went out, an applicant should be responding. But having been paying close attention to the conversation, many of us know that the commitment to develop a portal for complete application resubmission was actually developed to solve the problems caused by the issues with the current application system. The board identified the incredibly wasteful process being undertaken with a 30-day notice process and that it would streamline the program's review to look at a complete digital submission. This was the county's idea. The board, in fact, discussed discontinuing the 30-day process in lieu of this portal. Yet to hear the conversation today, the results of this confusion are being placed primarily on the shoulders of program participants whose only goal is to have an actual opportunity to do the right thing. Please understand that there really has not been an opportunity for applicants to enter a functional program. The portal resubmission has actually been the first step discussed by this board that would solve the problem of figuring out who is compliant and who is not. Yet there seems to be an active push to avoid this part of the conversation. Until we implement the 60-day window for a resubmission of complete digital application, we don't really know the status of our current applicants. And fees may be low for some people. For many people who have already put their life savings into this process, every extra fee, especially to leave a failed program because local conditions have forced them out of business, is pouring salt on an open wound. I strongly urge you to give our licensed community the chance that they were promised by entering this program. To do anything else at this time is to turn your backs on the current program participants who have come forward in good faith, on the word of the county. Thank you very much.
Next on the line is Ron Edwards, who will be followed by Anna Stockel.
Good afternoon. Well, I'm going to sympathize with Sheriff Kendall here. We recently had a young couple from Florida that she graduated from school, and because of the opportunity for her to teach in an underserved area, she got a job at Ukiah High School. She enjoyed teaching it, but she is now leaving after 1 year because she was unable to find housing. And so I sympathize with this. So I'd like to take a little approach to this. I'd like to bring back the memory of John, how John Pinchas did things, combine it with the new way of Ted Williams, and let's pencil something out here on a napkin. It seems that the county should be looking at areas who have the same problem. And it really is housing. And the county definitely is going to have to come up with some type of housing to incentivize people to get here, to have a foothold, and then go forward. I think that's a real good starting point on that. And then that way the sheriff could expand the search nationally instead of just locally in California. I think that would help. And with his program of training deputies in the sheriff, in the jail, that would help. Now, Covelo, this one is really simple. Board, direct staff and planning to come up with a non-permitted hoop structure covered in plastic. This fine would be per foot. And as deputies drive around, it would be very simple for them to simply mark into their GPS the coordinates of this, say, over one hoop house, because one could be for vegetables. This way we're giving some leeway. Then that could be compared in the database at building and planning. Is there a permit on that property? That would be a simple check, yes or no, which could trigger the fine. And then it could go to the cannabis database and do they have a permit? And then they would be in compliance or non-compliance. That way, hefty fines could go out. Now, hefty fines to a cartel or organized crime is not going to hit them immediately. They may absorb that, but they tend not to pay, or in the meantime, that would be gaining the sheriff department or the county general fund money to come up with the 2.4 million. And even as the sheriff said, if the 2.4 million fell out of the sky tomorrow, it would take a couple of years to fix that. So this would be an approach to start working on this problem now. I mean, if everybody in the county can see what's illegal, why don't we start with a mechanism to send out a letter and penalize these operations? Now, maybe for some reason they are legitimate and we totally forgot about it, but that would be a process that could be done. We wouldn't be throwing our hands up doing nothing. Send those darn letters out. Let's get these large grows shut down and let's make the community start feeling better. Thank you.
And the last caller on the line is Anna Stockel.
Hey. Unmute.
Anna, you're live with the board. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Me again. Aren't you happy? Hopefully you're getting used to my personality by now. I'm used to working in an environment where we can just throw the craziest of ideas out and discuss them without, people telling you you're crazy. And a lot of us from where in engineering, we don't draw within the lines. And I think I mentioned in my previous comment, Elon Musk has already blown up 11 of his starships trying to land one. So moving on, so I'm not like a politically correct person, but please bear with me. And maybe some of my ideas are crazy, but hopefully you might listen to some of them. One thing that I heard just now that triggers me, I know every single one of you knows you are trying to remove me from my home right now and make me homeless. And it's very hard to actually say that without crying. You're taking me to court, and I've tried to work with you for over a year on a code that makes sense for everybody. But that's a side note. I'm just sad that I keep trying to work with you and nobody even replies to any of my emails. So back to my point. I agree with Sheriff Kendall in everything he's saying. We need more deputies. I don't agree that we shouldn't be able to hire them here. This is an amazing place to live. We are gun friendly. We've got a gun club out here on the coast with sheriffs and Fort Bragg police who belong. I've taken the concealed carry class myself. We have this beautiful area. There shouldn't be any reason people can't come up here except for that somebody said the homeless problem. Yet you're kicking me out of my home. So we'll go back to that. But there are other ways, Sheriff Kendall, to combat the cannabis problem other than straight on law enforcement. And I did write an email to your recent post on Facebook, and I'll try and read it really fast in my last 20 seconds. Are you working with the campaign against marijuana planting? Camp. I don't believe the quoted resources, your 500 helicopters, etc. Oh God, the reason is people won't want to have legal grows where they're pretty sure they're.
That concludes public comment for this item.
Okay, I want to go back to Sheriff Kendall for kind of concluding comments and thoughts.
When I was younger, when camp came to town, we would normally have them for roughly 45 to 60 days in Mendocino County. Now we are fighting for extremely limited time slots with them. Sometimes it's down to as low as 7 days in Mendocino County. Other counties have needs as well, and camp is trying to serve the entire state. The state needs to reinstitute the camp program, hopefully with some funding that they would have from Cal Cannabis, from the programs that they put into place. We also need to make sure that as we begin to move forward in these things, the state takes some responsibility for the amount of problems that legislation has laid on the backs of locals. And right now I'm seeing a lot of things that the state was responsible for, from the housing of inmates to dealing with mental health issues to everything else, that is being rested squarely on the back of local government. Now, I understand that there's a reason why they're doing this, because local government seems to be doing a better job with it, but we do have a capacity that we can handle. And we have been at maximum capacity for a while the problem continues to grow.
Supervisor Hashak?
Yes, thanks, Chair Jurdy. I'd like to move that Sheriff Kendall return to the board with a plan to have resident deputy in Point Arena and Covelo, and the cost for that and how that would be budgeted.
Okay, that's very specific. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll go ahead and second it.
Discussion?
Yeah, go ahead, Supervisor Williams.
I'm not against that. I think resident deputies are a good idea, but I would like to know, I'm tired of being blamed for this problem as a supervisor. I want to know, what amount do I have to say yes to? If we scrape together everything we have, does that mean this problem, it goes away, we're done, we did it? What I don't want to do is allocate $2 million and then hear it again, that we're not doing anything to combat the crime inland. So I'm not looking, I don't want to lowball it. I want to know, what will it actually cost? And I know the sheriff came up with 2.4 and maybe it'll take a few years, but how much of that 2.4 will be focused on the cartel gross? Are we really going to rid our county of cartel gross for 2.4? If that's the case, I would rather support that than the resident deputies right now, because I just get complaint after complaint after complaint from people saying the supervisors aren't doing anything to solve the problem we have in Covelo.
Was that addressed to me as a question?
Well, I guess also to the chair. I'm just, what is the process here? When do we want to look at the budget? And obviously we need to know how much money it'll take to solve this.
Okay, well, it's going to take a lot more than money. It's going to take some changes in legislation. It's going to take some changes in the thinking of the state and federal government. And this is yet another issue where, okay, so these things have changed, and how do we get law enforcement to fix it? Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't put that ball in motion. I didn't cause that problem.
you have as much ability to fix it as I do, right?
So where does the change need to begin? Do we have to have enforcement, but this should have started quite a while ago. And I'm telling you that this is not the fault of you folks for that. I can guarantee you that. However, when a lot of these new pieces of legislation were enacted as new laws, there was no thought process. And I'm sorry, but police chiefs and sheriffs have been saying, somebody had better think about this. It fell upon deaf ears. And just like many things that go on, people want to point to law enforcement to fix the problems. And there are some problems that we simply cannot fix.
Well, Sheriff Kendall, I mean, you've been with us all day today, and as you are with most of our meetings. And earlier this morning, we heard from California Fish and Wildlife, and I think you heard several of us on the board express some frustration that while they're clearly very vocal about ways in which the county could have the nearly perfect regulatory program for the people in the regulatory program, we haven't seen a lot of action by California Fish and Wildlife, i.e. the state, on this issue we're talking about right now. And you know, I don't want to narrow it down just to Round Valley, although it's probably most pronounced there, because I've heard about the cartels from people up in the Piercy area too. So I think it's beyond Round Valley. But that's clearly, in my mind, that's something that's a state and federal. You know, that this is crossing international borders, it's crossing state borders, it's organized crime. And so it's much bigger than any one county or city can deal with on its own. So I guess we're all kind of looking to you, but not just you, but you and other county staff and our state and federal partners. What would the perfect system look like? And it's not something, you know, I'm expecting you to come up with on the spot at a board meeting, but I think what we're asking is, how can we develop this, you know, wish list for the state, local government and federal government to team up together? You know, it may not look exactly like the old camp program. It may look a little different, because some of the issues we're facing, I think, are different than they were in the 80s. I don't remember hearing people talk about cartels the way they're talking about them now, back then. So I think some of the strategies are different, because we're also now focused maybe more than in the past on the environmental crimes than was focused on the past. So what would that perfect team look like? And it's looking like it would involve Fish and Wildlife. It would involve probably some other state agencies, in addition to the county of Mendocino. Anyway, and Humboldt, our partners, are nearby counties. So I think that would be the best we could come up with is a proposal that we could take the state, take to the feds, and say, this is what you need to do to partner with us to solve this multi-county, you know, regional, really state program.
Absolutely. And our cannabis enforcement ordinances need to be as close to the same from county to county, especially in our area, or we're simply squeezing the balloon and it will pop out in Trinity County, and Sheriff Saxon will have a problem, or it'll pop out in Lake County. And if we can all kind of come together and collaborate on this to see what are the common problems that we're having in every county and how do we deal with those together, so that we don't open a floodgate, into Mendocino County, or we push them over into Trinity or one of those other places. But the state and the feds have got to get together with us on this, because Mendocino County did not create these problems. Much of it was created due to legislation. And the fact that we have a lot of people who are choosing not to choose a career in law enforcement simply because of things that, police officers, police chiefs, and sheriffs aren't being supported in some places. And I think that we have to take a good hard look at that and start saying, where enough is enough. And the other thing that I think we're going to absolutely have to do is make some hard choices. Now, I will absolutely bring the proposal back to the board regarding the incentives and whatnot for the resident deputies and whatnot. in these outlying areas, that will help with some of the general crime. But until such time that we deal with the illegal marijuana market and we start to truly deal with the black market, because the black market is outpacing us, they are outrunning us, they're doing everything better than what the white market is right now. We have got to deal with the black market. And until such time that it gets too expensive to play that game here in Mendocino County, they will not leave.
Okay, looking at the other board members' comments.
Yeah, I would second your proposal if that was a motion.
Well, as chair, I can't make a motion, but someone else can.
Oh, okay, I'll move what Dan said.
This is Alice Pearson, Deputy Clerk of the Board. Can I get a clear restatement of that motion, please?
I think the request was for the sheriff to work with county CO's office, other county departments, our state partners and federal partners to develop a proposal for state, federal, and local government to address the 21st century challenges that we have with illegal large-scale cultivation that's taking place in rural Northern California.
So moved.
Second. And I think that there's already a motion on the table, but if Sheriff Kendall is already bringing it back, that would be fine with me. And I think, you know, we have the immediate problems of crime and we have the big picture problems. And I think both of these motions are meant to try to fix those two types of problems.
If it's helpful, I'll withdraw my second of the motion for resident deputies in lieu of hearing from Sheriff Kendall as to what is probably a better big picture solution.
Well, what I'm hearing is Sheriff Kendall's going to bring it back anyway, right?
Yes, Supervisor Aschak, I've already got that drawn up. It just has to go through meet and confer before I can take it to the board.
Okay, thank you. I'll withdraw that motion then.
Okay, so I'm sorry, we have a new motion, and was there a second?
Yes.
Okay, so motion by Williams, second by Supervisor Hashak.
And Supervisor Mulhern co-sponsored this. Is she okay with the direction it's going?
Thanks for asking, Supervisor.
You're okay with it?
Just fine. Thank you for asking.
Okay.
I'll give the sheriff Carmel's car right now if that'll solve the problem. That's how eager I am.
Chair, if you don't mind, I would like to say one thing.
Go ahead.
You know, I've only been on the board for 97 days, but who's counting? You know, I think that really what we need in Mendocino County is a united front when we're talking about our sheriff's officers and our community, including the regulated cannabis market. I think that if we all come together and agree that we don't want people cultivating illegally in our county, we'll be able to make some headway. And it seems today, with the board providing direction on enforcement, hopefully that sends a strong message out there to the community that we're going to move forward and we're serious about having the bad actors taken out of our market. And I appreciate what I hope will be a collaborative relationship with the sheriff and the board of supervisors.
Okay, thank you for that. I do think that our multiple agenda items are very interrelated, and hopefully they do, you know, help move forward some solutions. Okay, can we conduct the roll?
Supervisor McGordy?
Yes.
Supervisor Williams?
Yes.
Chair Jurdy?
Yes.
Supervisor Mulhern?
Yes.
And Supervisor Hashak?
I think you meant, no, there he is.
Yes.
The motion carries unanimously.
Okay, well, thank you, Sheriff Kendall, for sticking with us to 7:05 tonight. And with that, I think we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
See ya.